Hey everybody!
Hello.
Welcome to Shockingly Delightful.
Hi.
Howdy, I've got my
Goat mug.
spaced out. Well, it's not just a goat mug. I love that there's the background sort of blurred. Like he's like
Like he's shockingly
he's shockingly
delighted.
delighted. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, actually. Perfect.
I love it. I love it. Well, welcome everybody to Shockingly Delightful. I am Michelle with Moksha Grace Coaching.
And I am Krista, and welcome to another episode where today we're going to do a little something different. I don't know that we're going to do these consecutively. I don't think we're going to talk about this every week for the next 12 weeks, but I do think we should go down the list and touch on each one of them, and that is the different universal laws.
Yes.
Now, we've all heard about law of attraction. We
Yes.
know it. We've heard it a million times, but law of attraction is just one of 12 of them, and actually it is number 4. So there's 3 that are even higher priority than law of attraction. And so today we're going to talk about the law of divine oneness. What the hell does that mean? What does it mean for you? How do you even go about applying it? What's the point? Etc., etc. Hi, Raymond. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us and sharing us out.
So, Michelle, why don't you want to talk a little bit about your thoughts around this first, or fill us in on what the law of divine oneness is?
Well, so I think backing up a little bit,
Sure.
As kids, we hear about the 10 Commandments, and we hear about, church and rules, and depending on what religion you are, and that's whatever, there's all these different thoughts, right? And rules, doctrines, and things that we have to follow, commandments, and or we're not going to get into, his grace, we'll just say. And what I have found through my spiritual journey is that there's always something to follow, right? And when you dive deep into all the different aspects of many of the I haven't done all of them. I'm still learning. There's this thread of commonality. And when I came upon the universal laws, I was like, oh, wait a minute. This kind of brings everything together for me. And that's why I started diving into the universal laws. And, you can certainly read more about it in, we're going to talk about books later, but.
Well, and I think it's interesting that you bring up, the common thread among religions. And it's also interesting because there's also a common thread among the creation stories in every culture. It's actually interesting. A lot of people don't realize that almost every single culture has a creation story that even includes a great flood of some sort, completely separate from Christianity, completely separate from the Bible, taking religion out of it. They all actually share a lot of very similar, eerily similar creation stories, that then begs the question, how did they all come up with the same story? And especially to such surprisingly similar details. And honestly, the law of divine oneness is kind of that answer.
Right.
If you think about it. So let's dive into a little bit about what the law of divine oneness is, which is the law of divine oneness says that we are all connected, that every living being on this planet that has ever existed, that will ever exist, is connected.
Mhm.
Obviously, that means energetically. We don't literally, well, it depends. I was going to say we don't literally have a cord attaching us to each other, though.
Oh,
I mean, I guess not physically, literally on this plane, but it is the concept that we are all connected. I feel what you feel what I feel. The karma that you do unto me is what is done unto you. It also plays a part in things like hive mind, which I'll get into later on. But it also could very well be a somewhat of an explanation for why most, if not all, civilizations on this planet share very similar ancient stories, or there were means of communicating with each other like we do now.
right. And what I find fascinating about this law, this topic, and please share this out if you know somebody who could use something different to listen to and watch, because there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and I thought that I think that, you know, Kristen, I thought this would be a nice break, you know, nice lighthearted conversation. But the law of one, what I find interesting is that, you know, separate, and this is the part that really got
Well, hold
me.
on. The Law of Divine Oneness. The Law of One is a book, which I will also get into, but
Yes,
distinction.
yes. Uh, so is separation is an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you read your book, which I know you're going to talk about, and
Mm-hmm.
I read a different book, and
Mm-hmm.
they pretty much talked about this illusion. And mine was, I know you're going to talk about yours next, but mine was The Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me, and I've talked about this before, it took me about 10 years to finish that book because it was very uncomfortable. This thought, this process, this idea of breaking it down, and that we're all living in this illusion of separation was a lot to swallow in the beginning, and it took
Yeah.
me time to be able to absorb it all. And
Yeah.
I'm happy to say that I've not only finished this one book, but I've actually read like three of his other books.
Well,
Um,
you also started it way before you really dove into law of attraction and spirituality and all.
right.
Like, so yes, it took you 10 years, but not, it's not like she was reading it for 10 years. Like, she had to take a
No.
break because she wasn't in the right mindset, which is interesting because remember last week, I think it was on Moment of Presence, we were talking about when we went to Abraham Hicks and how I was not on the same energetic resonance of
Hmm.
what we went to see. And so I physically could not hear
Right.
what she was saying until my energy regulated itself. Very
Exactly.
much the same sort of thing.
Absolutely. Until I was ready to uh, read, hear, acknowledge what I was reading, it wasn't time. And so if I felt uncomfortable, I was at least self-aware enough to know, like, this isn't making me feel good right now, so I'm
Yeah.
putting this down and I'm going to go read something fun. You
Yeah.
know, it
Yeah.
wasn't until I dove into and I was willing
Mm-hmm.
to see a different side, to
Yeah.
learn something new, and to even think that it was possible. So tell me about your book.
So well, my book is actually a span of 5 books. I
Hmm.
think it's 5. It's called The Law of One, and it's one of those book series. I say series, but really it's anyway. It's one of those book series that you're either gonna love it or you can't buy into it. And the reason I say that is The Law of One is based off of the entire, all 5 books are um, the documentation of conversations that were had in, I want to say it was the 80s, maybe the 70s or 80s, of a group of scientists that were literally channeling with a higher entity by the name of Ra. That is not Ra, the sun god, separate, but it is RA spelled the same way, Ra. And the book is called The Law of One, and there's book 1, book 2, book 3, 4, 5. And it is an incredible, incredible book series. They're not super long. some of the concepts are very hard to understand, and that's because, and I was going to say this with what you were saying, is I personally believe there are some things that human beings are just not meant to conceptualize. I believe that there's some people are, some people aren't. I mean, just look at, we know someone who, this girl understands quantum physics like we're just talking English, where you try to tell me about quantum physics and my brain, it's not my thing. I don't think my brain is meant to absorb that information. You want to talk to me about operations? I'm all ears. You want to talk to me about a whole lot of other stuff? No problem. I retain it like a sponge, but there's certain things that just are not meant to be in this noggin.
Oh, I just had a huge revelation. Hold on. Sorry to
Okay.
interrupt.
Uh-huh.
You doing operations
Mm-hmm.
is the epitome of connectedness, because that's what you're doing, is making sure that all things are interconnected and working. Yeah, sorry. That it
Yeah.
just hit me and
Well,
blew my
I mean,
mind
you
for a
can
second.
connect that to my life number, life path being 7, which is the essentially is considered like the number of all things. It's the divine connection of masculine, feminine. It's da 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 da. It is God. It is divine. It is et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, it is a really, really, really amazing book series if you can grasp your mind around it. They go into a lot of different topics, everything from literally what humanity is experiencing at a global political societal level right now. It goes into why certain things happen to humans. It goes into our ancient ancestors and what their lives look like and their
Mhm.
capabilities. It's actually, you know what? I'm gonna read it again. I gotta read through it again because
I
it's so
may have
good.
to read it with you
It
because.
is an exceptionally, exceptionally good series, but again, you have to really connect to it. And like I said, there's certain parts of it that I was reading and I was like, I have no idea what they're talking about. I'm going to move to the next question. But it's cool because you're literally reading their conversations, and so you'll literally see like it tells you like minute by minute the conversation. And it's always kind of funny to me because they'll have this like really super complex, in-depth question that again, I'm like, what? And then the next question is like, you know, why is the sky blue? Like, obviously not. It's not that question, but it's something very like common and
Right.
easy to understand. So it's very funny to go through the books. At least I think so. When you've got like these really super like deep, in-depth questions, and then just like simple stuff. But
That's
it's
cool.
very eye-opening. Really cool perspectives on
Hmm.
spirituality, religion, humanity, morality, ethics. I mean, there's so much in these books that they're phenomenal.
It's so interesting that you went, that way. And
Mhm.
then I did, the disappearance of the universe, but then I also did the Hermetica, and reading about Hermetics. And there's the 7 Hermetic principles. And the first one of that one is, mentalism, and which is that we are all spirit, that we are, and it's the same thing. And so that's, as you dive into this spiritual quest,
Mhm.
uh, you realize that all of these different principles and religions and doctrines and rules, and they all have so much in common.
Yeah.
And it just proves that we're all freaking connected, people.
Yeah. Well, and that's where things like the hive mind come in. And the hive mind, it's kind of one of those things that honestly can be used for good or ill. It's usually one of those things that's taken advantage of by negative people because this is the concept of like, um, the group of people who believe only that which is shown on the news is true. That would
Hmm.
be hive mind, where like you buy into it because everybody else is buying into it.
Hmm.
Or, along the same lines, when I was going through treatment and there were thousands of people around the world praying for me and my survival, we can attribute that to a certain extent to hive mind. It's that
Hmm.
idea of like tapping into, if an idea gets big enough and enough people tap into it, it becomes a hive mind where it actually becomes difficult for you to see a reality outside of that. And so that's where things, that we've been seeing specifically over the last, let's call it 10 years,
Right.
where we've been seeing some of that become very dangerous in certain ideologies
Right.
and things that have sort of taken off like a train and sort of gotten derailed, that's where hive mind can actually be a little bit dangerous, is because we are all connected. And so it can kind of snowball effect and start taking on a life of its own even.
Yeah. And if anyone has any comments or you want to share your thoughts, please, and let us know you're here, because we know Raymond's here, but I see that there's other people here as well. So please chime in. So what else did you get from the Law of One, or yeah.
It's way too much to go into. Why don't you tell us about the Course in Miracles? Because you really didn't tell us much other than you read it and it took you a long time.
Well, no, I haven't even gotten to I mean, the Course of Miracles is the after book of
Oh,
the
or
Disappearance
Disappearance of
of
the
the
Universe.
Universe.
Sorry.
Yeah, but A Course of Miracles also, I suggest reading the Disappearance of the Universe first, because it kind of like gets you in the idea, and it's a conversation again, kind of like the one that you read that is being channeled. The Course of Miracles is like, there's meditations that you can do that help you absorb the ideas, because again, it's very uncomfortable in the beginning until you wrap your mind around it, or I should say wrap your spirit around it. But some of the things that I think of when we think about this law is, yes, the oneness, but also that yes, we're still connected, but yet we also have free will.
Yeah.
And so we have to respect each other's choices.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottom line for me is that we're all going to the same place. In
Mm-hmm.
the end, we're all going to end up back
Mm-hmm.
where we started.
Yeah.
And it's really about how we're going to get there. What do we have to move through in order for us to get to where we started, or get back to where we started? And what is it that we're going to learn and bring with us when we get back to wherever it is that we started? And the biggest thing for me was learning about curiosity. Why are we here? Are we moving forward? Are we moving backwards? Are we in a circle pattern? Like, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
So that was huge for me. That was huge for me.
And I was trying to, I'm trying to look something up, but it's not an overly. I don't think the book's popular enough for it to have a Google image search result.
Hmm.
But there's another book that I read. This is just the day of books. But there's another book that I read. It's called Beyond the Veil, and it really goes into a lot of different things. And it's honestly one of my favorite books on spirituality and the interconnectedness of everything, and the consciousness of everything, even that which we wouldn't think is conscious, because it really goes into the science behind all of it, and that's really cool. But there is a segment where he discusses the different dimensions and how,
Hmm.
2D, you've got, we'll call it the positive and the negative sides of it. 3D, you've got the positive and negative sides of it. No, I'm sorry. I lied. You've got 2D, 3D. When you get into 4D, it splits into two sides. And how you've conducted yourself in 3D essentially determines where you're going to go for 4D. Are you going to go to the more positive side, or are you going to go to the negative side? We can kind of think of that as like Earth versus purgatory. And then as you go into the fifth dimension, same thing. How did you behave in that lifetime? You could go to the more positive side, which we could call it hell, heaven on earth, or you could go to the negative side, which would be, we'll call it hell on earth. And
Hmm.
then once we get to the sixth dimension, we reconvene. Everyone ends up in the same place.
Right.
So the lessons that you learn, the way that you behave, how you conduct yourself in these lifetimes is
Hmm.
what determines which path you're going to take. But even if you go the quote unquote negative routes, you're learning the lessons you needed to learn. You just needed to learn them harder
Right.
and take the harder route to them, which
Yeah.
means you still end up at the same place. And then as you go into seventh dimension, eighth, ninth is where you start. Honestly, the way that it's described in the book is you essentially, physical form disappears the higher up in the dimensions that you go. And so the
Yeah.
higher up in dimensions, that's why there's some people who believe, and I'm kind of one of them, is aliens and extraterrestrials are actually just higher dimension beings. And the reason that we can't necessarily see them all the time or whatever have you is because they have the ability, they have learned, they have gone up the journey of ascension to the point where they can choose to come in and out of the different dimensions below it. And that's where we get things like these channeled messages and things like that it would be what we consider to be extraterrestrials, but they're actually just higher dimension beings.
And higher dimensional beings of versions of us, most likely, because if we're all connected, I
I
mean, if
mean,
we're all
technically,
one,
yes.
So
Yeah.
that's where the disappearance of the universe in the Course of Miracles comes in, because it's like we are all basically like, and then it kind of goes into the Matrix in a way, because it's like we're all stemming from a higher
A single
brain.
creator of some sort.
Right, and we're part of a brain
Yeah.
system, and
And this is where my personal belief, I don't think, there's people, those that argue against the idea and the concept and the understanding of God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it. They have a point, but it's a point of, I think at its root, I don't think human beings are meant to fully be able to conceptualize the understanding of what God is, of what our creator is, of what, because there has to be something. But even just saying that, my brain is already going like, you're gonna end up in a loop of confusion. Like, let's not do this. But that, I mean, that is the source of faith, and that's the source of belief and all of those things. And I just think human being like are, and actually in the Law of One, they do talk about this, that there are some concepts that our human brains are simply not meant to be able to understand.
right. Well, it's like that movie Lucy. I know
I've
that
never seen
not
it, but yeah.
not everybody loves, there's some issues with I don't know, it can be a little bit negative in the beginning, but when you see her transformation,
Mm,
when her mind is open, when her brain starts to open and she gets to those higher dimensions,
mhm.
and I actually feel like we're watching exactly what this is talking about.
Well, I mean, think about people who get struck by lightning or a coconut falls on their head and all of a sudden they can speak 15 languages.
Right. Well, exactly. Our
That
we're
in of
only
itself,
right.
that
Our
in of itself is evidence that we are not fully tapped into our brains.
right. Our brain, what is it? 10% we're using?
I think
Maybe
it's like 3.
7? Yeah.
Yeah, let me look it up. I think 7 might be right, actually.
Well, so while you're doing that, so I have um some of the core concepts of the Law at One, because I looked up some stuff. And so, okay, oneness, free will, spiritual evolution. So the purpose.
Okay, this is why you can't trust the internet. The internet's trying to say, oh, according to scientists, we use 100% of our brains. The 10% is a myth. Okay, that's a lie. You may not understand what the 100% looks like, but that's a lie. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Spiritual evolution, the purpose of existence in spiritual growth and progression through densities, which is exactly what you were talking about,
Mm-hmm,
and moving through those dimensions.
mm-hmm,
And then, being in service to others versus being in service to yourself.
mm-hmm,
So that's part of the spiritual evolution as well.
mm-hmm,
And we had an interesting conversation about ego this weekend.
mm-hmm.
And then the densities of consciousness, which that's what you were talking about. So basic awareness. The
Yeah.
second is growth and awareness of life, which is plants, animals. Third, self awareness and choice, which is humans, free will. Everyone has their options. And then 4 through 8 is moving through those higher levels of love, wisdom, and unity. With which I love how they said this, with the infinite creator, not towards the infinite creator, not but with. And I love that
Mm-hmm.
they said that. And I tend to think that it's not just with, but as well, because you can move with it or as. And if we're all connected, then it would be as, which blows my mind.
Now, if you want to really feel your brain go, ugh, you can even really think about. I was thinking about this yesterday, actually. you can go as far as deep as the incredibleness that our bodies
Mm-hmm.
are actually individual cells that are being held together by what? That are broken down into individual atoms and molecules that are being held together by what? And I can already feel my brain starting to malfunction as I'm going through this, because when you really start getting into the nitty gritty and the visualization of it, the fact that we are here having this conversation, A, are we even really? B, wild, because this is just atoms creating probably friction, which is causing a sound, which is my voice.
Right.
For all we know, we're some aliens like acid trip.
I was
Or
going to say, and we are not on any psilocybin today.
no, for all we know, we're, straight out of Men in Black, and we're just our vast, incredible universe that we know is actually inside of the marble of some gigundous alien whose size we can't even comprehend.
And we're sitting in his locker.
No, remember when they're playing marbles at the end and our
Yes.
entire universe is in a marble? That's
Yes.
not in a locker. That's all of
Oh,
that
I'm
is
thinking
in.
of Hale.
No, 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 no,
I'm
no.
thinking of that one.
Yeah, no. I mean, listen, for all we know, we're in a locker. I mean,
But that's what I was thinking about too, was the marble from Men in Black, because
no, you're
it's
thinking marble is
well,
different than
I
what
was
you're
thinking
talking.
both. I was
Oh,
thinking
okay.
both. I got it. I was thinking both. And it's mind blowing. It
Mm-hmm,
is mind blowing.
mm-hmm,
But how we act, how we treat others, because we are all connected, is what's going to come back to us.
mm-hmm,
And it's also how we treat ourselves.
mm-hmm,
And that's a huge lesson for a lot of people.
mm-hmm. That makes me think too of, like, we think of karma, and we think, if someone does something bad to us, they're gonna get karma back. And I feel like it's a pretty common thing for people to be like, well, this person is a bad person and their life is going really well for them.
Hmm.
You don't know what their next life is going to look like.
Right.
And if we think of those dimensions and how it works and how you go down and you split and then you go two different routes, I mean, that's one theory. Really, we don't know.
Right.
But just because, you're not seeing
Yeah.
karma played out in a way that you can see,
Hmm.
doesn't mean that that's not actually happening. Now, that's not, I mean, that might make some people feel better, I suppose. But it's such an interesting conversation.
Well, and it's funny because I actually said on social media last night, it's an issue.
It's funny, I read your comment not knowing it was your comment, liked it, and then saw that someone replied to you with your name, and I was like, Michelle Barone, there's another Michelle Barone in this group, and then I scrolled and it was you. It was hilarious.
So there was a situation. I don't want to get into all of the negativity about it, but somebody did some things to these
You
animals, these
can't say that
fiction.
because it leaves it too wide open. We had a group
Okay,
of
fine.
kids in the
It
local
was
area that ran over a bunch of protected
15 geese.
wildlife, killing them. I shouldn't use that word. Son of a gun.
No, we're safe now.
Second word now.
No, don't worry about it. We're safe now. Remember, because
Okay.
he totally,
Anyway, and this happened like a week and a half ago, and these kids are still at large. And honestly, I think at this point the parents are protecting them, which that's a whole other conversation. But go ahead.
But my point was, it's not up to us. And I learned this in the book The Shack, another amazing book,
Yeah.
that judgment is not for us. We should not be judging other people unless we want to play God, which I don't want that responsibility. That they'll get their due, they'll get their lesson when they're supposed to, whatever that means for them. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. And so what I was saying was, good, bad, or indifferent, karma, first of all, I said the truth will come out, because it will at some point. It's going to come out, and somebody knows something. And also, karma will catch up to them. But there's good karma, right? The people that videotaped it and tried, reported it, and they did some of their due diligence. And then there's the other side of karma, and that's the law of polarity, which we'll get into on a different day. But there's, yeah, karma. Karma's a bitch. Karma is a bitch, and it's very complicated. But again, it's not for us to judge. It's for the bigger source of the energy that we're being given to move around, move our these vessels that we're in. We're in a jar stuffed in a shoebox under a bed with a C grade on top of the box. Yeah, I'm gonna hope that we're gonna move up to B.
He's saying if it's like an aliens project is what our civilization is.
I know.
Oh, okay.
I know.
Sure.
I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, the law of divine oneness is one of the things. It's also, I feel like there's the other part of this where it's like, well, I don't want to be equal. Like, I don't want to be connected to everybody else. And it's like, you don't have a choice. Like, it's just, you just are. But that's also, there's some real benefits to this as well, which is, that's how we can relate to each other. That's how we can share each other's joys and share each other's pain. And there's this great, sorry, my nose is real itchy. The allergies are crazy right now. There's this great post going around where it says something along the lines of, a joy shared is joy amplified.
Mm-hmm.
Sorrow shared is sorrow like reduced, because when you share joy, you multiply it. But when you share your sorrow with somebody else, it helps relieve it from you and they don't take it on. So like, I feel like that even comes into play. Like that is divine oneness is I find often, it just happened to me yesterday, where sometimes I have to talk, like I just have to say something to somebody else.
Right.
To cause myself to have revelations about the meaning of something.
Right.
And so very often I'll, come to you or my brother or my dad, whoever, and I just need to say it out loud. And then I'm going to go, oh, never mind. I got the answer already.
Mm-hmm.
But I needed to share that energy for a second.
Right.
In order to allow the thoughts to come into my head.
Yeah. Well, and that makes a lot of sense. It's brainstorming, yet the other person is allowing you to.
Yeah, I think they got a D-. You're right, Raymond.
But the brainstorming and the other person is allowing you to process it on your own, and is just being that, making a stand for you, right? Like you're just there, you're taking up space, but it's to bounce it off of you. I mean, I think that's where that expression probably came up, like, hey, can I bounce this idea off of you? Yeah. And I think it helps the other person, in this case you, navigate the situation. And I think that's important. We talk about, I mentioned ego before, and we had talked about that this weekend, about, is all ego bad? And no, I mean, isn't ego also confidence? And it's, how are you utilizing that ego? Are you using it to be in service to someone else? Or are you using it because you want you're benefiting yourself? And that's a fine line too, because as we do work on ourselves spiritually and just to make ourselves a better person, some could see that as selfish, like, I'm taking time for myself. I need to do some things for myself, some reflection on myself. Well, am I being selfish with my time that I'm not giving to others? Or is it because I'm going to grow spiritually, be a better person, and then I'm going to have more to give to others? And so there's that fine line, of how you can, and you've got to learn how to navigate it.
Well, I think ego is another example of hive mind. Ego was demonized a long time ago, but we would not be alive if we didn't have ego. Ego is what inspires us to keep ourselves alive. Ego is what inspires us to stay healthy. Ego is why we put effort in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Ego is why we get up and go to work. Ego is why we feed ourselves. Like, ego, if we did not have ego,
Mm-hmm.
we literally would not be able to survive. And
Right.
yet, through one side of the conversation becoming totally drawn out of proportion by hive mind,
Yeah.
ego was demonized. Now the shadow version of ego is no bueno. That's where you put yourself on a pedestal above everybody else. Everybody is
Unheard.
below you. You're
Right.
superior to everybody else. Like that kind of thing. Of course, that's negative. But like there's some people who, in order for them to get in the gym and stay healthy physically, they have to look at it as I'm working out to be attractive to the opposite sex.
Right.
Or, I care about my looks so that I'm attractive to the opposite sex or whatever it is. I personally don't think there's anything wrong with that. If good comes out of it, if positive things come out of it, I cannot see that as a negative thing. I just can't.
I had a coach one time say to me, like, when you see yourself in the mirror, like, to help me feel
Mhm.
better, like,
Mhm.
wink at yourself.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, baby.
Ego is also what helps us get through things that are outside of our
Right.
comfort zone. Think about it. When you
Exactly.
have a job interview coming up and you're feeling really insecure, my strategy, I go the complete opposite end. I'm feeling insecure. I am going to convince myself that I am the greatest thing that has ever existed on this planet, the
You
greatest
are.
thing that will ever exist on this planet, and that I am the perfect person for that job.
Mm-hmm.
Gets me the job. If
Right.
I'm going on a date and I'm feeling a little insecure, I am the most beautiful person on this planet. My personality is the greatest thing that has ever existed. I
Yeah.
am better than everybody else because it gets me to point B. Then
Right.
once I'm at point B, I go, okay, I'm glad I got here. I feel way better. Everybody's amazing. Everybody's wonderful. We each have our strengths, but it gets me where I need to go.
Well, and that goes back to, as long as you're moving forward and not circling in a pattern, you're moving forward, you're moving out of a comfort zone into a
Mhm.
different comfort zone. And so it's a
Yeah.
growth zone and you're moving forward, then this is a good thing.
Mhm.
The other thing that I think is so important, and I talk about this with clients and we talk about it all the time, is reflecting on the things that you've gone through.
Mhm.
So, however, reflecting unemotionally, right? No shoulda, coulda, wouldas, no blaming, no shaming, no guilt, but
Mhm.
reflecting, true
Mhm.
reflecting unemotionally is what helps catapult you, because you then go, okay, what was that lesson in
Mhm.
that situation? Now let me take it forward with me so I
Mhm.
don't have to go through it again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think where people get stuck is they reflect on the challenge, but then they get stuck there and they
Yeah.
want to relive it, or I wish I could do it over again. And it's like, you don't get a do-over in that situation,
Yeah.
but the person you are now gets to do it differently the next time,
Yeah.
which then moves you forward.
Yes. And along the same lines, there's a big piece of this that we haven't touched on, which is how, well, I don't, the best way to say this. A single person
Hmm.
doing something positive, a single person learning a lesson, a single person shining their light, a single person practicing unconditional love is equal to 100 people who aren't doing that.
Yep.
And so that's a really important thing to remember when we look around and maybe we are disheartened by the community that we live in, or we're disheartened by how we see others acting or the things that they're believing in, or what have you. What we do
Hmm.
on the positive scale
Hmm.
compounds 10, 100, 1,000 times what
Yeah.
somebody is doing on the negative scale.
Yeah.
And there is a reason that mainstream media, news organizations, today's journalists primarily do not cover the positive.
Yeah.
And it's because it would cause too many other people
Mm-hmm.
to do the same thing, which would then raise the vibration, which is not what they want.
Which is why we're seeing shifts and changes in the world right now, because so many people are becoming more spiritually awakened and are walking the spiritual journey, have
Yep.
started their
Yep.
journey and the quest, if you want to talk about it that way. And therefore they're impacting everyone around them.
Yep.
Their light is shining, and together, because we are all connected, the one here, the one there, the one over there, together we're shining even brighter
Yep.
than we would alone.
Mm-hmm.
Alone is good, we're still shining.
Yep.
But you put all of us together, oh my goodness.
Amplified even more. There's actually been studies done that have documented when large groups of people, even just, I mean, moderate groups of people, let's say 50 people, 100 people, but particularly like when there's a worldwide group meditation going on. So these are people all over the world, not in the same room, but they all commit to meditating at the same exact time. There's actually been documented on many occasions. It's essentially proven at this point. Crime rates go down, suicide rates go down. I'm pretty sure natural disasters go down, violent crimes go down. All of that reduces. Why? Because of the law of divine oneness.
Yeah.
By contributing the positive energy, we are collectively raising the energy of every single conscious being on this planet.
Think of the power in that.
Mm-hmm.
The power and the control that we actually have,
Mm-hmm.
that we may be an illusion down the road, but for this moment, right, in this moment, in this second, us even talking about this and expanding our circle and putting this in other people's minds, that your vibration, your energy, your light, your optimism, hope, faith, you out there spreading that, us being on here talking about it and other people listening, and you sharing it out, we're effectively changing
Mm-hmm.
the next moment, the next day. And that's amazing.
Let's think about it on a more simple term. Anyone who's watching, think about a time that you have spent, even if it's, let's go even more micro. Think about a time that you have walked into a store and the clerk at the counter that was ringing you up was an absolute sweetheart. She had, let's call it a her, just for the sake of this example. She was so sweet. She was kind. And you walked out feeling happy, purely happy.
Yeah.
And maybe, this has happened to me a ton of times, maybe I walked in pissed off. But that woman at the counter ringing up whatever I was buying had such wonderful energy.
Right.
I now leave almost in a state of being ecstatic because of how good my energy feels.
Yeah.
That is the law of divine oneness.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I believe in, that old saying of, if someone doesn't have a smile, give them yours.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that same kind of thing. Share your energy out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is why it's important to take care of our own energy.
Mm-hmm.
I have to get on that soapbox just a little bit. You've got to clean up your energy before you start passing it on to others. So that's why we do have to be a little bit selfless and selfish about our energy, not putting ourselves in situations where we're going to be completely drained, knowing how to process that energy so we can bring it back up to a higher level.
Yeah.
And not get caught in the muck with everybody else. And that's when, because you don't want to share it's like, and I use the example of brushing your teeth. You brush your teeth every morning so you don't have your stank breath, continuing out as you're talking.
Oh gosh.
And it's the same thing with your energy. Don't share your skanky energy. Clean it up. Clean up that energy. High vibe. High vibe. I know I'm going to hear it later from Raven. I can just hear it now. I'm going to get teased for this one. Skanky energy.
I think that is a great place to end this episode. Do not be putting your stank ass energy on everybody else.
Clean it up.
Oh my god.
Wait, what was that thing from Impractical Jokers? Clean it after?
Wash it after.
Clean up your energy before, during, and after. And if you want ideas on how to clean up your energy, and if you want ideas on how to clean up your stanky breath and energy, join us.
Stanky breath, go see a dentist or do some research online for that. We're not doctors.
No, but seriously, if you wanna learn more about how to be more mindful and how to care for your own energy so that you can impact the world around you, then tune into Moment of Presence. Join us next week for Shockingly Delightful. We will have more lovely conversations like this. And yeah, thank you for being here.
Go to mokshagrace.com to look up Michelle specifically, and go check out that book, Disappearance of the Universe, A Course in Miracles, and the Law of One series. Highly, highly recommend.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And if you're in a situation where your career is not going well, the other book that I highly recommend that gives you a very high level idea of this is called The Motive, and it's by I wrote it down. Patrick Lencioni. And basically it's two leaders, one successful, one is floundering, and the one leader basically asks a bunch of questions and they work together on why are we doing what we're doing, and why is the one that's floundering giving away all of what he's supposed to be doing, his responsibilities, because he just egoically wants to be the leader. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's what his motive is. And the other one is, well, I won't give it all away, but anyway, it's a very high level, surface level explanation.
From your mic a little bit. You got a real explanation close, very loud. Awesome. It sounds really good.
Yes, it's a great book. If you want to dive in slowly.
Right on.
Anyway, thanks to everyone for joining us, and we look forward.
Next week we'll probably be covering the next law of the universe.
No, next week we're supposed to be doing our reaction.
Oh, well, I don't know that I would rather be watching live, so next week might be pre-recorded or replay, because I would prefer to watch live as our 47th president gets sworn in.
Yeah. His inauguration.
I think that maybe that's one of those things that maybe you're just not meant to say is inauguration. Just like I'm not meant to learn about quantum physics. I think that's one of your bugaboos.
And, like some kids can't say cinnamon. I can say cinnamon. Cinnamon. I almost tripped myself.
It is one of those things. It's
cinnamon.
There's so many words. If you say them enough times or read them enough times, you're like, I don't think that's right anymore.
Yeah,
that's exactly. A weird concept. But anyway, thanks for joining us today, guys. We'll see you next week. Have a great week. Stay safe. Make good choices.
And if you like this video, please like and subscribe.
Bye.
Bye.